Hey Playas, how you doing? It's summertime, and for whatever reason, summer always makes me think of racing games and makes me want to play racing games. So this video, I'm going to be talking about some of my favorite NES racing games or racing games that I think you should go check out and play. Now, I'm not covering every racing game because there is some trash on the NES in terms of racing games, and I just am not going to cover all of them. So enjoy. So hopefully you can find a few on this list that look cool and are worth playing. If not, maybe you agree that some of these games are really cool and it'll make you want to go play them. So the number one racing game for me on the NES is Road Blasters. Now the reason I like Road Blasters so much is, it has a couple different levels of gameplay on it. You're driving around. Okay, you're not necessarily really racing other than racing against the clock, but you are shooting other cars, you are getting upgrades. I think the stages look beautiful, and I love the backgrounds and graphics of this game. I think for an 8-bit version of this game, they did an excellent job of capturing the arcade feel and gameplay. Now, I mean, nothing beats the arcade. It's one of my favorite arcades of all time. So that could also be why I like this game so much. I used to go to the laundromat across the street from my high school and pump a couple quarters into this game, and I came out with every high score on the arcade. So yeah, I love it, and I always wanted someone to come along and try to challenge me to beat it, but they didn't. So, I guess I'm the Road Blaster Master. Rad Racer, here's one you probably know if you're watching this video. If not, well then you are in for a real treat. This is a pretty cheap game to go pick up. Road Blasters is also a pretty cheap one, so definitely keep an eye out for that. But yeah, Rad Racer, inexpensive game. There is a sequel to it as well. I'm not going to talk about it in this episode, but you never know why I like to do follow-ups to some of these different series. Rad Racer reminds me a bit of Road Blasters, except you're actually racing in this one. There's not really a first or last, so you are, I guess, still racing against the clock. It's a little bit more difficult to get through this game, I find, than Road Blasters, because Road Blasters is pretty generous with the fuel, which you can pick up by blowing up other cars or enemies. And it is just a little bit more generous with the fuel. Rad Racer, not so much. So Rad Racer, you start off racing in a desert, then you can make it to a city. And I'm not really that great at the game, so I usually only make it to the third or fourth stage. I think the next one is a canyon, or maybe I'm getting that confused with Outrun. Unfortunately, Outrun isn't on the NES. But it is a great game, and I will cover it eventually. But yeah, Rad Racer. This game also came with some 3D glasses, so you can play it in 3D. Now, Eliminator, Boat Duel. This is like the hidden gem, I feel, on this list. Yes, this is a racing game. It's a boat racing game. In fact, you're dueling it out against another boat in order to eliminate them out of the race and take first place. Eliminator, Boat Duel, baby. Okay. So this game has a few different gameplay formats. One is just at the start of the game or the race, you're kind of just heading it off with the other racer, the other boat, so you can take the lead. Then once a lead is established, it goes into, well, possibly a couple different modes. One that is a third-person mode similar to Road Blasters or Rad Racers that I talked about, but you're in a boat and you're going off jumps and avoiding buoys and collecting some power-ups. Buoys! And then the other one is like a top-down overhead view, which leads into the next few games I'm going to talk about, which is really fun as well. And the way this game keeps changing up the gameplay and just the graphics in terms of 8-bit are pretty solid. The music didn't really stand out as anything special to me, but it wasn't annoying or terrible or anything. The sound and the controls are great. So you have a pretty solid game here, with a lot of layers to it. So the next up is Super Off-Road. So this is where I was going with the top-down view. So a lot of people are familiar with the arcade. Great arcade. You got 3 steering wheels. You could get close to your friends and all squeeze in there shoulder to shoulder and race it out. I no doubt most of these racing games who have original arcade versions, those are the better versions to play. But the NES did a really good job of this one. It's quite different, but you can still play 4 players and have a lot of fun with it. And it has that top-down view. Another game that's very similar to that is Super Sprint by Tengen. Now, I talked about this before in the Tengen video, which I think was my first ever real YouTube video that I ever did here for Playas Guide, other than different clips and highlights from Twitch, which you should go follow Playas Guide on Twitch. We have a cast of highly talented retro gamers there to keep you entertained all week long if retro gaming is your thing. But besides the point, and going and watching that video immediately after you're done watching this one, it is another game, I don't know, it's just so simple. And sometimes, you know, there's a bit of a learning curve when you first go to play it, because the controls are a little bit hard to learn at first. But once you get the hang of it, the game is a lot of fun. Now, the last 2 games I talked about are both top-down view and show the full track. This next game doesn't show the full track, and I'm talking about RC Pro-Amp. Now, this might be the best top-down racer on the NES. Yeah, some people might like Micro Machines, and RC Pro-Amp 2, in my opinion, is a bit better. But again, there may be a follow-up episode to this, so if you like this episode, then like it on YouTube, and I'll do another follow-up and talk about those games and some other racing games. But yeah, RC Pro-Amp is a great game. You can plug in your 4-score and play with some friends, up to 4 friends at the same time on your NES. And the idea here is that you are driving a remote control car around this track, and the tracks are really well done, and the power-ups and everything are just very thought out. You can get your boost, and if you use it at the right time, you're able to get around and pass the other competitors and hug corners, but watch out for an oil slick, because that will spin you out. Anyways, RC Pro-Amp, I'm sure you've heard about this one, but if you haven't, you're really missing out. And I think, you know what, all of these games are all very affordable. Super Sprint, RC Pro-Amp, Road Blasters, Rad Racer. The only one that might be a little bit, I don't want to say pricey, but not cheap, is Eliminator Boat Duel, but it's totally worth it. It's totally worth picking up. And that is it for this episode of Playas Guide. If you're into retro gaming and game collecting, check out some of the other videos, and feel free to subscribe to the channel, because it's absolutely free to do so. No commitment necessary other than hitting that button. That's it. Keep it retro. Later, players.